Hey, Impact High School students, Pastor Andy here, and welcome back to a new year. We are excited to be back with Impact, and of course, a new year is nothing without a new series. And so tonight we are actually, even though we're in life groups, which is kind of weird, tonight we are actually going to be kicking off our new series called Questions. I'm really excited about this series, partially because it's not my idea. This series actually comes from you guys. I met in December last month with a group of students who were interested in being a part of CIA, which is kind of our student leadership team. Quick plug, if you're interested in being on student leadership and helping us dive deeper, help plan some things, all that good stuff, let me know. Please shoot me a text or a message on Instagram or whatever. We're meeting officially for the first time this coming Sunday on the 17th from 7:30 to 8:30 after our Impact night. And so we would love to see you there. Let me know though, so I can get you an expectation sheet, just so that we can kind of give you an opportunity to say, yes, I'm in, and I'm willing to come and be a part of this stuff. So let me know if you're interested in that. But as I was meeting with them last month, I asked the question, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to see us cover and think about and deal with in this coming semester? And one of the things that you all said was, we want to dive in on some tough topics. There's a lot going on in our culture right now. There's a lot of questions to be asked, and there's a lot of different opinions on all of these different topics. And we want to know, like, okay, what does God actually say about this stuff? And how are we supposed to respond to it? Like, how does it matter for us? And so we're going to be doing that, including this week over the next 5 weeks here. We're going to be covering topics like sexuality and race and politics and abortion and just all this big stuff that our culture has a lot to say about, that there's a lot of differing opinions on. And we're going to ask ourselves, okay, what does God really say about all of this? And to start, rather than trying to talk about a specific topic, I would like us to address the topic of bias and the Bible. And what do I mean by that? Well, our biases are preconceived notions about a topic or an idea. Let me give you an example. Say I'm watching a football game, and one of, like, my favorite team, whether it's the Vikings or the Packers or the Lions, whatever, my favorite team is playing. That means every single call that a ref makes, every single, position call on the field, whatever, I'm going to be cheering hard for my team. Like, oh, they didn't do that. That other team did that. And, I'm going to be looking at the entire game through the lens of my bias for my team, towards my team. I'm going to want them to win, and I'm going to want everything to go their way, and I'm going to look at the facts a certain way, and I'm going to look at what happens a certain way. Versus, say I was watching a game and I didn't care at all who won, but it was supposed to be a really good game, and it was maybe the championship game or something like that. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I don't care who wins, but I want it to be a fair game. I want everyone to play right. I want to really know who the best of the best is. I'm going to look at that game in a different way. My biases are going to kind of fall to the side, and I'm going to get a clearer picture of what's really happening. And I'm asking us for this series, as we cover some really tough topics that there are a lot of strong opinions to be had about, I'm asking us to take our biases and put them to the side and ask ourselves, okay, what does God really say about this, and what ramifications does that have in my life? And when I say that, I don't just mean, I should put my biases to the side if I wasn't, like, raised in the church or blah, blah, blah. Like, no, I'm talking about even those of you who maybe have been raised in the church your whole lives and have kind of that traditional background, like, where I'm asking you guys also to take your biases, because there are plenty of biases that come from any background, and put those to the side and say, okay, regardless of those things, I want to just kind of open my mind, be willing to hear different voices and different opinions, and have honest discussions, and dive in and say, okay, what does God really have to say about this? Because I guarantee you, over the course of this series, I'm probably going to say some things on both sides of the aisle, if you will, that would make some people uncomfortable and would be a little different and a little unexpected. And so let's take all of this together and let's open our minds and say, okay, what does God really have to say about this, and what effect does it have on my life? Now, you might be wondering, Andy, why in the world will we do something like this? That sounds scary and spooky. I don't want to talk about stuff that people disagree about and that there's all kinds of challenges and questions about. Well, let me tell you why. 1 Peter 3:15 tells us this: but in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that you have that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. In other words, God asks us to not just know what we believe, but why we believe it, and to be able to take that information and with gentleness and respect go to the world around us and say, this is what I believe in, why, and carry the gospel out that way. And so that's part of why I'm asking us to take our biases, put them to the side, open our minds, and say, okay, with gentleness and respect, I'm going to dive into these conversations. And I want you guys to not be afraid to disagree. You're allowed to disagree with me, you're allowed to disagree with your leaders, with each other, whatever, but we're going to have these conversations with open minds, with gentleness, with respect. And if at any point in time during the series you're like, man, I'm really struggling with this, like I'm having a hard time with this topic, or like that's really real in my life, like that's a personal thing I've dealt with, whether it's race or sexuality or whatever, then talk to me about it. Talk to a leader about it. Be willing to have those conversations, because we're not going to run away from them. You're not going to be ashamed for having a different opinion. You're not going to be pointed to and called out or anything like that. I want us to dive into these conversations as honestly and with open minds as we possibly can. And so be willing to step in. And part of the reason we're doing this, let me give you an example. For example, say that you have this background and belief where you believe that life begins at conception, that God, that's a person immediately, that's a separate human life that God has known from the beginning of time, endowed with purpose, value, all that stuff that God has a plan for. Then you're going to view the issue of abortion a certain way. Now flip it and say that you look at that topic and you're like, I don't believe that human life begins until someone's born, until they're living and breathing and a person and thinking thoughts, whatever. I don't believe that human life starts until then. And that until then, it's a part of a woman's body, and that woman has her own autonomy and rights and value and purpose. And for someone to try to tell her what she can do with that, well, you're going to have a particular opinion about that as well. So I'm asking us to take both sides of these things and say, okay, I'm willing to let those things go for the sake of opening my mind and saying, okay, what does God have to say about this, and how will that impact my life? In other words, kind of the big truth statement I want us to take home, I'm going to read it off my notes so I get it right, is this: the truth of who God is and who we are in Christ should inform our beliefs about tough topics. Not our preconceived notions, not our preconceived ideas or our biases, but who God is, what he says, and who we are in Christ. That should inform how we handle these tough topics. And whether you're like, I'm a believer, I'm running at this, let's go, or you're wrestling, or you're just like, yeah, I come to church because my parents make me. Wherever you are, I want us to go into these conversations with an open mind, ask ourselves some tough questions, and hopefully come out of it better and sharper and ready to take on the world around us. So guys, I'm looking forward to this series. So if you would please step into these conversations tonight together, be willing to see what might come out of it. I'm excited. I think it's going to be really good. I'll see you guys soon.